Hi, welcome to Grafted, Jewish Roots of Christianity, and my name is Stephanie Pavlantos. Thank you for joining me. Today, I have Rachel Kushner. Thank you, Rachel, for being here today. I appreciate your time.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Rachel, and then I'm going to give her time to talk, and we're going to get into her testimony. We're going to get into what she does, what her website's about, things that she offers, resources, but also we're going to talk a little bit about Hanukkah since we're getting into that season. So Rachel was raised in a Messianic Jewish home. She celebrated both Jewish and Christian holidays. She is a teacher. She is an active member in her congregation or church, and she's been called the child whisperer for her ability to capture the attention of young children. I thought that was pretty cool because I have a daughter who's small. She's like 4'10", and children love her.
Isn't that funny?
She's like a child whisperer, but I've never thought of it that way. But
yeah,
excellent.
Just like a connection with kids right away.
She did. Yeah, and that's cool. You do too, obviously.
Yes.
So, yeah, well, tell us a little more about yourself.
Sure. So, well, like you said, Stephanie, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. But as you said, I grew up in a Messianic Jewish home, and that didn't come easy. And the reason I say that is because my grandparents are from Europe. And let's see, so my grandfather and mother were living in Vienna in 1937, had my father in 1937. 2 years later, they saw what was happening. They saw what was going on with Hitler, and they knew that they had to get out. And so at the time, you had to have a sponsor in the United States in order to come.
Right.
And so, back in the day. So my grandmother, we called her Mutti. So I always referred to her as Mutti because my dad's first language was German. And Mutti is German for mother. So he called her Mutti. And I'm sure we're mispronouncing it. Anybody who speaks German would probably be like, that's not how you say it. But that's how we said it in our house. We said Mutti. So Mutti began to write letters to friends of friends of friends, anybody that she could find, any contact in the United States that she could find. She was desperate for a sponsor, finally got a sponsor. And then in 1939, they took a train from Vienna, Austria, to Italy. I can never remember the name of the town in Italy, but they boarded a boat called the Rex, and they came to Staten Island on Columbus Day, 1939, with the Statue of Liberty in full view. It gives me goosebumps every time I say it because it's hard. Yeah, it's just hard to believe that my little family is part of this huge piece of history. Although when we look in our history background, we all are connected to something amazing, I think. So that's a little bit about like the Jewish part of my background. And when my dad was in high school, they ended up getting situated in St. Louis, Missouri. And when my dad was in high school, he had a lot of big life questions. He was it was a lonely childhood for him because both of his parents had to work. And so he was coming home from school every day by himself. He had a little dog, Buddy. Buddy was his buddy for sure. But he had these big life questions that nobody was able to answer. And he befriended a guy in high school whose name is Larry. And Larry always, when he carried his books, he always had the Bible at the very top. And so my dad was like, well, let me go ask this guy some of my big questions. And Larry faithfully opened his Bible and would give my dad answers to these big questions. So that started in my dad's heart this love for scripture, Old and New Testament. And so that's where he was going to get his answers to his life's questions. So really, as a young kid, he knew he wanted to preach. And so I do recall him telling me that, like, at the age of 16, he was preaching somewhere, like, on a Wednesday night somewhere. I don't know.
Wow.
Very, very different world back then.
Wow. Yeah. That's a really cool story because we don't, just with all the misinformation that's out there
Mm,
and people trying to really cancel history, cancel
right.
the whole Holocaust story, and there were survivors. Obviously, there were people who managed to escape
Mhm.
beforehand.
Right.
It is just heartbreaking to think that so many people were deceived and
Mm,
didn't see what was coming. Didn't see it. But yeah, you're obviously God was protecting your family and gave them
yeah.
insight before
Oh,
it
yeah.
got to the point that they were sent away.
Yeah.
So that's
I
amazing. That's
think that
really
they were on one of the last trains that left Vienna,
cool. Okay.
and I actually just recently I was telling somebody this story, and I pulled out my phone and showed them a picture of their passports because it
Mm. has
has the red J for Jew stamped
Wow.
on the front of their passport, and it's kind of shocking.
Wow. Yeah.
Y Yeah, it's a real eye opener to see that
Oh
we
yeah.
were marking people, Jew, you're a Jew. And as you know, in Europe, they would make Jewish people wear that yellow
Yeah.
star, Star of David on their, you know, jacket or
Clothing. Yeah.
whatever, their clothing. Yeah.
Wow. That's just,
Crazy.
yeah, it's so far removed from where we are now, and we really have to take the time to go back and pay attention to some of those things. And I mean, I love history, and so does
Mm,
my son.
mhm.
And so he actually had the opportunity to go to the Holocaust Museum in Israel.
In his oh, wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I did too later. I
Mm.
think he went first because he went with a group
And so
that
he
was
went, like,
sponsored.
as a child, as a kid?
He went as a teenager. I think he was 18 when he went, maybe
Oh, what was
19.
that like for him?
They actually sponsored a program in which they
Oh,
chose 30 people from the well, actually from the world, and he was chosen. He was chosen
wow.
trip. They paid for everything for him to
Wonderful.
come and learn about the Holocaust.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah, so they
It was at Yad Vashem where a friend of our family's was there. I don't remember. I mean, I'm going to say it was probably by now, it's been 20 years that he was there, but he looked up my family's name and found some of our relatives that we didn't know about.
wow.
I forgot all
Wow.
about that till you said Yad Vashem. That memory came flying in.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It was heartbreaking. I mean, when we went there maybe a year after him. My
Yeah,
my husband and I. Every tour, I believe, you have to go through it. I mean, they take you through it. So
sure.
we did, and yeah, it's just heartbreaking. I mean, people might be whispering about something as you're going through, but it's just very solemn and very, very sad.
Quiet. Yeah. I was at, and I don't remember if this was the Holocaust Museum in DC. I can't recall where I was, but I remember that they had a whole display
Mm.
of children's shoes. It was
Yes.
just their shoes. And it was so heart-wrenching because it even though you're looking at shoes, somehow it
Mhm.
puts a face to all of these 6
A
million
real
names that.
human being.
Yeah, it's a real human. Like there were little children that had their feet in these shoes and they were playing ball and running around from, their parents trying to get them or whatever. And
Right.
it is so absolutely heartbreaking. But it makes it real in a
It
way
does.
that I
Yeah.
hadn't understood before.
Yeah, I think they had in Israel, they had things where they had all the shoes, where they
Mhm.
had suitcases, where they had
Oh, wow.
glasses.
And they had what?
Glasses. Eyeglasses.
Eyeglasses?
Yeah,
Oh,
they
wow.
had different displays where it was like everyone's
Mhm.
glasses, everyone's suitcase, all suitcases that they, I guess, found, collected,
Wow.
destroyed,
Whew. It's
and
powerful.
shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
long for heaven where nobody wears glasses.
yeah, I know. I understand that. I actually I don't wear contacts anymore, but I know what it's like. So I've had it
Yeah.
most of my life. But yeah, it would be nice to not have
Right.
ailments and pains and different things that go on in our lives, right? So
Yes. All of our pain will be gone.
yeah. And yeah, don't get me started. But yeah, I've had conversations lately about the end times and my kids asking, and they're just like, it's a heavy conversation, but we sometimes aren't able to get past all the tribulation stuff or what we what we think of as the end times, to think about the glorious place we will spend eternity. Yes. We don't always think about that, because if we think we might go through what we will go through, what we won't go through, so many different opinions, but just to think, well.
Yeah. And you know what? You're bringing to mind this past weekend, I'm sure everybody knows, but the Angel Studios released this movie called Bonhoeffer.
Yes.
And we went and saw it. So Bonhoeffer was a German pastor theologian, and he really worked to, well, he tried to assassinate Adolf Hitler.
Right.
And he was then executed because of that. But one of the very last things that he says, Stephanie, in his life, as he's walking to his death, and I don't know the exact quote, but it's something like, "This isn't the end. This is just the beginning."
Yeah.
And as you were describing, like, we're excited for heaven. Like, that's the goal. Like, that's our home. Everything we're dealing with here now, it's just a temporary, tiny little speck in the grand scheme of God's plan.
And it's so quick, we don't even realize it. And I don't often share the story, but because it's very short. But I was praying one time, and this was years ago. I was just on my knees praying, and it was like I closed my eyes to pray, and instantly I was in heaven. Instantly. And I didn't see anything. Okay, the Lord didn't let me see things and whatever. It was just, what I heard was, that's how fast it will be.
That's how fast. Wow. Ooh,
yeah.
That's powerful.
You close your eyes, boom, you're there.
Yes.
So I thought that was.
And it happens in an instant. We're never alone. He's always with us.
Closed. Yeah.
Yeah.
As my eyes were closed, boom. It was like, oh, wow. So.
That's awesome. It really is amazing to think about heaven and what it's going to be like. Like, I could talk about it all day long.
Oh yeah. No, I know. But I mean, even like this week. So, well, before we get on Hanukkah, I want you to share a little bit about links to Messiah, because this will lead into our Hanukkah conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have been studying like Daniel 7 and 8 and teaching on it. So some of this stuff's like really fresh in my mind about.
Oh, good.
But yeah, tell us a little more about links to Messiah.
So links to Messiah. Well, first of all, my maiden name is Links. And so that's the connection, links to Messiah. So really, it's a way for me to share my childhood with other families who want to learn about the Jewish roots of our faith. So we have seasonal activity boxes, and the activity boxes. So my background is in elementary ed and special education. And I really love the idea of hitting every sense. So in every box, there's something to taste, there's something to listen to, there's something to read, there's something to watch, and there's lots of activities, lots of arts and crafts and different things.
That's a very Jewish thing I've heard, like to introduce all the senses in learning.
Well, that's interesting. I never really thought of it as a Jewish thing per se. I guess just because of my, back education with teaching, I just know everybody, all of us, we learn in such different ways, right? So somebody might be able to like read a story about Hanukkah and understand it and be able to tell somebody else. but another child needs to experience it and make their own dreidel and light the menorah to really understand, like, well, what is this holiday all about? And why does it matter? And how is it important to us today? So anyway, so we have activity boxes. So we do your standard, if you will, Jewish holidays. Hanukkah is a big one. Passover is a big one. Yeah. This year we did the fall feasts. So the box had a focus on 3 of the fall feasts. It was Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and then Sukkot, the Festival of Tabernacles. So kids got to really dive in there and do all kinds of things.
That's fun.
Yeah. So we offer the boxes, and then we also have something called Shabbat Club, which is
I saw that.
Yeah, that is something that is so fun for me. It's a digital membership. So it's for families that want to learn about Shabbat and what are some of the Shabbat traditions. So each week families receive a little packet in their inbox, and it's got worksheets and, again, videos and music and all kinds of different things, devotionals. It's just a very simple way for families to start a new habit of practicing Sabbath as a family.
Right.
And then we have a podcast, and we have all kinds of freebies that we're always offering. We'll have some Hanukkah freebies coming up. So all kinds of good stuff.
Cool. Yeah. And your site is links2messiah.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is links to Messiah on social media, links to Messiah podcast, links to Messiah website, links to Messiah activity boxes.
Yeah, yep. Get your brain out there.
I had to keep it simple for myself.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand, but it's good because everything's repeated, and they actually tell you once you get your brand, everything is about that brand. So it's very good marketing.
Well, I just had to make it simple for myself.
So getting to Hanukkah then, because your boxes, I can't wait to kind of check into this, but I know that
they're fun.
You have just even a free resources for Hanukkah on the website as well, which is a maze, a puzzle, coloring pages, and an I Spy treasure hunt. So if anybody needs any little free things that the kids can do on Hanukkah, that's a perfect
definitely. Yeah, they're just really easy things. You sign up, you print them out at home, and have fun.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. So behind you have a box. So is that what your box looks like?
Yes, that's one. They're all different sizes depending on which one. But yeah, generally speaking, they either look just like that or a different size.
Okay, sounds good. So, like I said, I've been reading Daniel. We've been teaching on it in our congregation. So just yesterday I did, or I should say Saturday, I did Daniel 8 and 7 before that. But yes, this whole thing, the whole history, actually, that's kind of where the story, we learn the story as believers by reading Daniel and understanding Antiochus Epiphanes and who he was and how evil he was, and taking away the customs of those Jews, because he was more he was from Syria, but he was also one of in line from Alexander the Great. I mean, he was from one of his generals, and so the 4 generals. So that's a whole big story there. But if you've read Daniel 7 and 8, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. But so then we get into all of this, with how all that kind of blew up for Israel, just because of what was going on, the war going on between the king of the north and king of the south, and poor Israel was between them. And so just always getting battered by either king. But so then that just leads into some of the battle that went on out of Israel and from Israel, from the people, to put an end to all this. And so you can pick it up wherever you like.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's such really good background. And honestly, what you're saying is a good reminder to me to go back and read that, because it's always good to go back and, of course I remember a lot of it, but I love going back and having a refreshed memory, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I read things and it goes right out of my brain.
Yeah. I made a PowerPoint and I save all my PowerPoints so that I can always go back to them. And
Oh, good.
it's
Smart.
funny because I actually have this old notebook
Yeah.
that is sitting here. I still, but it was I first taught Daniel because Daniel's like one of my favorite people in the Bible.
Yes.
And it's like, you think people always say like, who besides Jesus would you want to go meet? And Daniel's one
your
of
guy.
them.
Yes. So as soon as we get to heaven, we know where you're going after Jesus and your family. You got to go find Daniel.
Everybody I've already who's gone before me. Yeah.
Right.
So, but we'll be finding him. But then I just thought, like, when I started teaching hunt I kept the notebook. So I kept all my notes and all my research. So it was really funny to bring it out now, probably, I don't know.
All these years later.
18 years later.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
To bring out that notebook and look to see like, wow, I did this. And I, like,
look how,
like I had some of this research I didn't even remember. So
right. Yes, I understand that totally.
Yeah. So
well,
now I try to keep my stuff.
I love it. Yeah, try to keep it fresh in your mind. Yeah, so Hanukkah is a fun and special Jewish holiday. It lasts for 8 days. It's also called the Festival of Lights, as many people probably know.
John
and it
10,
celebrates
right?
what?
John 10 talks about it because it's also
Yes.
a dedication, I think. And so Jesus was
around there. Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. That's perfect. Well, and it celebrates, this important event in history when the Jewish people won back their temple in Jerusalem from a king, as you talked about, who had taken it over and tried to get them to stop worshiping God. Right. And so we know it was King Antiochus who ruled the Jewish people, and he forced them to stop worshiping God and instead worship the Greek gods. And we didn't like that.
No.
I mean, this is very basic terms, right? But there was a small little group of Jewish people called the Maccabees, and they decided that they wanted to fight back. And even though they were very small in number, guess what happened? They won, as we know. Yeah. And when they got back to the temple, it was a mess. They had done all kinds of horrible acts on the temple, but they cleaned it and they rededicated it to God. And they found only just a little tiny bit of oil to light the temple's menorah, which is like that special lamp. But miraculously, it burned for 8 days until they could make some more oil. But just as you talked about John 10:22, Jesus is in Jerusalem during Hanukkah, called, as you said, the Feast of Dedication.
That's what Hanukkah means, right? In Hebrew, Hanukkah is dedication.
Yes, and I wish I had my Bible right here to read that. Do you have your Bible?
I do have one.
Oh, okay.
The Messianic.
Let's look at John 10:22, because it really is showing that Jesus was participating in cultural events, religious events of his time. And during Hanukkah, people celebrated God's light and provision. And then, as we know, Jesus said that he is the light of the world.
So 10:22, I have it. Now, this is a Messianic Family Bible. So it does use the term Hanukkah, but if you have like an ESV, it's going to say Feast of Dedication.
Right.
So then came Hanukkah. It was winter in Jerusalem. Yeshua was walking in the temple around Solomon's colonnade. And this is basically when the Jewish leaders, it says, surrounds him saying, how long will you hold us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us outright. So it kind of gives us where he was and what was going on. So, it's the only time it's mentioned. But
I know it's the only time, but it makes me think like, okay, so what does this mean for us today? I think it's a way to remember miracles, just like the menorah stayed lit. Jesus will always keep his promises to us. I mean, there's so many lessons that we can talk about. Jesus as
Right.
our light. The Hanukkah light, points to Jesus who brought light to the darkness.
Right.
We can trust him. We know that he will guide us and protect us.
He's the light of the world,
He is the light of the
Yeah.
world. And I think about like the Maccabees who stood up for what was right, and I know I saw this Bonhoeffer movie over the weekend, but how he stood up for what was right. I think that we can follow the example of the Maccabees by,
Yeah.
living faithfully,
Exactly.
even when it's hard.
And it's going to be more and more important as time goes on, because we're living in a increasingly evil planet and world.
Yes.
And it's, if we don't stay faithful, if we don't stand up for our faith, I mean, how will others know if we don't stand up for our faith? One of the things, now again, I'm only telling you this because it's very fresh in my mind. I just taught on it. So
okay,
if it was something I hadn't read for a while, I would not remember it at all. But
I totally understand. I can so relate to that. Thank you for saying that out loud.
Yeah. So I'm not putting anybody down because I can't remember it.
Right.
In chapter 8 of Daniel, verse 14, it says, so there's like two voices going on. So Daniel hears a voice, and then and Gabriel comes to him, but he hears this voice, and this voice tells the angel, questions are being asked, like, how long will this go on? And so then the voice basically says, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be restored or made righteous. And so I looked all this up to kind of understand what was going on.
Okay.
2,300 evenings and mornings basically are talking about the morning and evening offerings. And so the priest, and this is really cool because this is where a lot of people who are probably more in the mainstream church, and I'm not putting anybody down at all, but we don't really understand what it took to keep the temple going and to keep things going the way God wanted them to. But there was but Aaron and back in, I think, Numbers, it talks about how to dedicate the temple, and it took 8 days. So if you need reference, go back into the Torah and look, and that tells you basically what was going on, what was required. But the menorah that stood in the holy place had a light that stayed lit until Jesus resurrected, basically. Like, it only went out. It was like an eternal fire, and it never went out. But and Antiochus was able to make it go out, but the fire went out when he went into the temple. But these offerings took place morning and evening, because the offerings were twice a day, but one day with 1,150. Let's put it that way, 1,150 days, which comes to 3 years and 10 days. Well, the Maccabees started the revolt, and it lasted 3 years and 10 days.
Wow, I did not know that connection.
Yeah. And so
that is amazing.
So from the time that they started the revolt to the time that they restored the sanctuary was 3 years and 10 days. So,
wow.
Yeah.
God is so cool.
Yeah, I love that little detail in there, but we don't understand it because there's also so many like opinions on what 2,300, mornings and evenings means. And some people say, no, it's years, but it was sacrifices or offerings. And so, yeah, pretty cool little detail there. And God knew exactly to the day how long it would take. So,
that's such a good reminder that, like, in all of that, of what you just shared, God knows everything about the future. Even when things are scary or confusing, like, we know that we can trust in him. Wow.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It is. Yeah. And so maybe share what's the difference between a menorah and a Hanukkah, I think is the name, right? or
Hanukkah, yeah.
because it's a different.
Yeah, I think menorah is more of like a general term for like those candelabra kinds of things, and Hanukkah is like the specific one that we use at Hanukkah. I just call it a menorah. I know some people call it a Hanukkah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Suit yourself.
But there's different candles, right? There's different, like, the amount of candles one holds.
Oh, yes, correct. So for Hanukkah, there are 9 candles. There are 8 candles that are all one height. And then there's one that's a little taller, and it's called the shamas. Or shamash. I never say it right. It always sounds like I am lisping when I say it correctly. It just doesn't sound like I'm saying it correctly, but I am.
I avoid it.
Yeah. But it's the shamash is the servant candle. And so we use matches or whatever to light only the shamash candle. And then that candle is then used to light all the other candles. So on the first night, we just light one candle and we let them all burn down. And then on the second night, we light 2 candles and so on. So on the 8th night, we have 9 beautiful candles lit, and we just wait for them to all burn out on their own. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, yeah. It's really beautiful. Was it not last year? I think the year before I did on my social media platforms. I would just come on every evening at, I don't remember what time, I don't know, say 6:00, and just light the candles on the menorah and say the Hebrew prayer, and people could hop on live and join me. And it was really special. And I think I need to do it this year because somebody just sent me a direct message, said, "Are you lighting the menorah this year every night?" And I was like, I think I need to do that because that was a lot of fun, because kids get on with their families, and like people who either celebrate and have a menorah or who purchase a box, they can hop on and meet other families who are, wanting to teach the same things to their children. So it's a really fun connecting point.
Yeah, that is. So what is the prayer that you would, so is there a different prayer each night? Or is
it's the same prayer every night. And what's so funny is, like, I can remember when my kids were little, they would say, "Why is everything Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah tov, levetz ivanu l'chadlik ner shel," fill in your holiday, Hanukkah. Or on Shabbat, we would say, Shabbat or Passover, Pesach.
Right.
But it's, "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who commands us to light the Hanukkah candles."
Yeah, and a lot of the prayers do start like that. And I think it's, again, we go back to how Jesus taught us. And my thing is always, "Dear Heavenly Father." I mean, honestly, that's how I start my prayers. Or I might just, "Dear Father."
Yes.
But I love that, "Blessed are you, O Lord." That
Blessed
part.
are you.
Yeah, saying that, because we and I mean, and this just came to me, but we often think of the Lord blessing us, but we never think of us blessing the Lord, saying, "Blessed are you."
Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe.
Yeah.
Ooh, that is a strong way to start a prayer. You're right.
It is.
And I'm glad you actually kind of slowed me down, because it's very easy to just blah, 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 say it. And that's a really good reminder for all of us, right? It's really easy to have a rote time of prayer. I like, sometimes before a meal, it feels rote.
Yeah.
To me. And my husband and I were talking about this not too long ago, where it's like, let's make sure that when we are bowing our heads and praying, we are remembering who we are speaking with.
Right.
And how important that is, and that he hears us, listens to us.
Yeah. Another little thing the Lord showed me.
Yes.
In Acts 2, it talks about the teaching. I'm sorry, it might be 2, but I might be wrong. But anyway, let's look it up because I have my Bible here.
Sure.
But there's a part where they said they're talking about that the Jews taught others, they taught them to pray. But actually what it says is it taught them the prayers, not to pray, but it taught them they
prayers.
taught them the prayers. So if I can
Is that referring to like the traditional Hebrew prayers, you think?
That's exactly what it is. And so
cool.
And we kind of don't give that credit that here in the New Testament, because, let's face it, we don't want to think that they were taught Jewish prayers, but they actually were. And of course,
yeah.
But if you read it, it says the prayers. It doesn't say praying. It says there's that definite article, so it's a certain type of prayer. Nice. And when you understand that and again, I know it's into, I'm just not seeing it.
I know. You'll see it as soon as we finish our podcast.
Yeah, I will. Because you know what? This is like I said, the Hebrew, but I have my ESV that I take a lot of notes in. And that one, it's marked and it's circled, so I can find it quite easily. But of course, this one, because I don't remember exactly the verse the verse. But anyway, but I think that just knowing that nearly every prayer, especially the prayers that we don't even hear or read about, Yeshua himself would pray that way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we think that the Lord's Prayer is just the only way he prayed, but it wasn't. He prayed those Jewish prayers.
Oh, sure.
Blessed, O Lord. And to his own Father, and how much, and called him King of the universe. But this goes back to like I don't know if you probably know this, but I didn't, and I was taught, but even at the wedding of Canaan, when Jesus turned the water into wine, we think it's just like no big deal. But when they, so share the prayer that they would say over the wine. Do you remember that one? I know it's Blessed, O Lord. It starts.
Yes, let me try to recall it. That's funny because my brain's in Hanukkah.
I know. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I believe, let me hold on. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah tov. No, there's something, I have it wrong, but there's Berei Pri Hagofen, and that's the one for the wine, for the juice.
The creator of the vine, right?
The creator of the fruit of the vine.
Fruit of the vine. So, but again, it starts out with,
Blessed are you,
King of the universe. So here, what does Jesus do? He changes the water into wine. He created, in their viewing, the fruit of the vine. Because when you read that story, and then right after that, it said, and his disciples believed.
Yeah.
Why did they believe? It was because he just showed them that he was a king of the universe, because he created the fruit of the vine.
Yeah. And I think it's really good that you're pointing that out, because I think sometimes we forget, like, Jesus was Jewish.
Yeah.
All of those first followers that we're reading about in the Gospels, they're all Jews.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. And they probably took these prayers, they just rattled them off.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. Jesus
it was
like
memorized and handed down from generation to generation. Absolutely.
And he's like, no, think about this prayer. Look what I just did. And then the first thing, before they drank it, right? Before they would even drink from the wine.
Sure. Yes.
They said the prayer.
Yes.
And they did the same with the bread. So everything. And then it's amazing I guess for people out there, if you ever have the chance to get like an English version of the prayers Jesus would have prayed. And to sit down and go through that and repeat some of those prayers, because they are powerful, and they are letting you know exactly who Yeshua is and was at that time, and what
as you're speaking of all these prayers, so Shabbat, which is celebrated every Friday night at sundown till Saturday on sundown, Jews around the world, it's Sabbath. We celebrate on Sundays, most of us. Well, on Friday evenings, there is a very special prayer that we say over the challah, which is over the bread, a special prayer over the wine, and a special blessing on the children, which is so cool, beautiful.
Yes,
love it.
It is. And even the husband sings. I know we're getting off of Hanukkah, but
yes,
the husband,
Jewish traditions.
Yeah, but the husband sings Proverbs 31 over his wife, and and just beautiful things like that we don't incorporate. And I wrote a Bible study and included this in the Bible study because when we went to Israel, we actually went to a Shabbat service and a meal,
cool,
and saw how the families do it, and it was just beautiful. But I just thought, how different our families would be,
yes,
if our husbands sang over us Proverbs 31 songs.
Proverbs,
Or if we sang over our children and blessed them every week.
Friday,
Blessed them.
Right. Or just having a family meal. I mean, our culture, we have just gone so far on the opposite end of the spectrum where, and no shame, to like all the sports and all the things that our children are involved in. It's really easy, I think, to get sucked into that world and not have a Shabbat, a family day, a day of worship and rest where we cease from our work.
Right.
I mean, that's what Shabbat is all about. It is. Breaking our work, stopping our work and spending time with the Lord, spending time as a family. That's one of the things that I love so much about pretty much every Jewish holiday is around a table.
Yes.
It's a family table. It's intergenerational. I love it. You got grandma, grandpa, you got the aunties, you got mom and dad, you got little kids, you got teenagers, you got babies crying. What'd you say?
And the neighbors. I mean,
invite the neighbors. Everybody. Yes. It's a very inclusive, beautiful experience. It's a family experience.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I love so much about Jewish culture. Now, I was interviewing Jeremy Pryor on my podcast, and he told me that there's only one country in the entire world where the population is not decreasing, but increasing, and that's Israel. And he believes it's because of the family feel that Shabbat brings to the world, if you will. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. And
he was
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and what's sad to me is, if, like, when we started actually celebrating Shabbat,
yes,
people, the first thing they want to do is kind of give you a hard time. Like you're doing, like, almost like you're part of a cult. And it's like, because I'm choosing to put the Lord first.
Right.
And basically rest on his day. And rest on the day that he asked us to rest, and keep it holy the way that he wants us to keep it holy, or remember him in the feast. How can that be bad? How can people see that as being a bad thing?
Yeah.
I don't understand it, honestly, because I see, I mean, I feel closer to the Lord than probably I have my husband, and I, and then the congregation we're with, it's truly a family, not like the mainstream church was ever to me. Because I celebrate all the feasts with these people.
Nice.
I celebrate every feast with them, and I celebrate every Shabbat with them.
Oh, nice.
And so
they've become your family, your mishpocha.
Yeah. It's not about, if my sisters aren't here, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't have anybody to celebrate with. No, I have. It doesn't matter, because even things like Christmas, and they're very exclusively family. There's not too many people who invite their neighbors over. Now there are people, so I don't want
I know what you mean. Yes,
but
I understand.
But we knew many people who had things going on at Christmas, family parties and whatnot. And it would just be my husband and my kids celebrating alone because all of our family lived a little farther away.
Right.
So it would be like one of the loneliest days for me. But
yeah.
just sad to not have my family unless I traveled to see them, which was always, I could, but it wasn't always easy. But yeah,
Right.
but I mean,
But you're talking about inviting others in and experiencing that sense of family around your own table.
Yeah. And with the feast, that's what it is. It doesn't have to be your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brothers, your cousins. It's your neighbors. It's the people you fellowship with. It's anybody.
Yeah.
It's for everyone. It's for community. And that's what makes it special to me, because that's exactly how it was meant to be.
For sure. That's why I think we should encourage all of your listeners to have a Hanukkah party.
Yeah.
Invite people over.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate. Let's spin the dreidel and make latkes, which are those potato pancakes fried in oil. It's so good.
And you play that little game, the dreidel game. That's like a lot of fun. I played it with the kids. I taught some of the kids in our fellowship that.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah. Well, I was going to show you. I think we talked about it briefly, but like this year in the Hanukkah box, kids will get to make their own. I don't know if you can see that, but kids will be able to make their own dreidels, which are the little tops that we spin so they can decorate it. It's really cute. It's got metallic marker. It's a wooden dreidel, and then they can embellish it and spin it. Anyway, fun things.
Is. And it does. It's like, it's just a celebration. It's a feast. It's a party. But it's also getting together. And every time you light that candle, you're basically thanking the Lord that He's the light of the world.
Yes.
No, I'm not saying people can't do that at Christmas, but this is just like specifically about being the light of the world. I think that's how I see it, because that menorah, that was what it represented in the holy place. He's the light of the world.
Yes.
You had the show bread, I should say, on that table, which is He's a bread of life, And that furniture represented exactly who the Bible describes Him, how the Bible describes Him. And so I think, I don't know, I just think it has special meaning.
Oh, for sure. So. And one of the fun things too that we like to do at Hanukkah is eating fried foods. And you go, what? Why? Because we're remembering the miracle of the oil, right? So we're cooking some of these, jelly donuts. Jelly-filled donuts is a big Hanukkah tradition. The crispy potato pancakes, they're all fried in oil because we're celebrating the miracle of that oil lasting for those 8 nights.
Right. That's cool.
It's fun. There's songs and share stories and acts of charity and
and I think all kinds of fun too. Now, and again, I don't want to take away from anybody else, because Christmas is a time that a lot of people give. Thanksgiving,
yes, of course.
Give.
Oh, yes, yes.
But what I like about the feast is you are really, every feast you're encouraged to give to someone who is in need, to give. And I've even heard that in Israel, every Shabbat, people will buy groceries before Shabbat and then give them to the homeless people who need them. And they'll just go and set a bag full of groceries for Shabbat for them, to them,
Nice.
And those things. And like Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement is really about, it talks about I'll forget the word. We take it as fasting, but it's really, it's sacrificing something. It's sacrificing, and I think that we don't realize how much it's built into each of the feasts to go above and beyond and help others during those feasts, because we're celebrating how much God has given us.
And we want to share it. We don't need to hoard all the things. Yeah, exactly. That's good. That's good, Stephanie.
So, but those are the things I've learned about them. Like, not just a feast. It's more than it's celebrating what God has done, but it's also remembering those who are in need, and that you have been blessed.
Right.
So out of those blessings, you can help others. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I think it's just learning. And I'm reading this great book, and it's called The Biblical Feast and the Return of Jesus. And
Mm.
and boy, is it good. I've shared about this probably even on TikTok, and so I really love the book. I highly recommend it because it just gives such
nice.
a very deep meaning of the feast. And we, for people who think they're just Jewish feasts,
Right.
no.
It's more. Right.
Yeah. They're not. They're the Lord's feasts, and He
Yeah.
had plan and purpose for each one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and our history and everything. Well, and I don't think we realized, getting back to Hanukkah, but the dates were the revolt started like on December 15th, 167. And again, I know it because I wrote it down. And then the temple, the sanctuary, I should say, was made righteous. It was cleansed and dedicated on December 25th, 164.
It's December 25th, 164. Oh, wow. Well, this year, Hanukkah starts on December 25.
Yeah.
Huh? That's wild.
Yeah, December 25th. That was the end of the 8 days, I think. And so, yeah,
okay.
so, I mean, so even some of our own traditions are crossing over with Jewish traditions.
Yeah.
So,
And well, something that as you're saying all of this, I'm thinking, I think it's really fun and meaningful and important for Gentile Christians to understand the meanings of these feasts and how they all eloquently and beautifully point directly to Jesus.
right.
Jesus
Yeah.
celebrated them. He is the fulfillment of all of them.
Yeah, not the one and done.
That's right.
Yeah. He fulfills them, and he continues to fulfill them.
Right. There you go.
And I love that too, because because we hear fulfill and we think one and done. But it's, it's more than that. So there's and I mean, this book that I was telling you about, I mean, it talks about the second Exodus, and I had never ever heard that until I started reading this book, because just like he did in the first time, he's going to rescue his people from Egypt and all those countries and bring them back to Jerusalem when he returns. So it's just, there's like these deep fulfillments, and I really encourage you to those of you who are
I'm with you. I love what you're doing, Stephanie. I think it's so wonderful that you're pointing light and shedding light as we're talking about the Festival of Lights. I didn't even mean it in that way, but I really think it's great what you're doing to highlight all of these beautiful traditions that are still meaningful for today and relevant for today.
Yes, they are. Yeah. And then I appreciate what you're doing as well, because I love your website. I love the links to Messiah. Again, that's what it's called, and I'll leave a link there. But
great.
You have her podcast, which is under the same name, Links to Messiah Podcast. You have Shabbat Club, and then you have a number of resources for Seders, for Passover, and Hanukkah. And then, of course, you can shop for all the boxes. So, yeah. So it's a great website, and it's very...
Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah, I was going to say there are a few more boxes left. If you want to get them in time for Hanukkah to begin, yes, on Christmas Day. Yeah, we're shipping them out on December the 13th.
Okay.
We'll probably still have a couple, one or two left. That's usually the way it happens. And then people order it. They don't get it exactly on time, but you can still celebrate. It doesn't matter.
Right. There's 8 days you can celebrate.
There's 8 days. That's right.
You can celebrate one of those days. So, right. Well, thank you.
Well, Rachel. This has been really fun. Thank you, Stephanie.
I enjoy it. So maybe sometime we can have you and talk about another feast next year.
Yeah. Oh, talk about Passover.
At the end of our feast for the year.
Right. Okay, that sounds fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie.